of Justis Connection, and I am proud to be building the premier lawyer and legal referral service for you. Black women are one of the fastest growing groups of entrepreneurs in the United States. Yet despite our hustle, it's been challenging for Black women to raise capital. Since 2018, for Black and Latinx women, we've only raised 0.64, that's right, 0.64% of all venture capital funding. That's why I decided to come to my community, the Justis Connection community and family. We are better off having access to solid legal counsel. It makes our community stronger, our families more secure. We're able to defend ourselves if anything should arise. It's important to have someone who can relate to you, understand your background, and is culturally competent to handle your issues. I started this journey because I was always asked for a legal referral. Kisha, can you find somebody who does criminal law? Can you find somebody who does family law? Sometimes it would take me hours, sometimes days to make that connection. And I felt like, one, as Black lawyers, we were leaving our communities most vulnerable by not having a concerted network that connected us. And quite frankly, businesses and corporations who were looking to diversify their ranks didn't know where to go. I knew tons of Black lawyers, still do, and now I know more than ever before. I've been building this database from scratch since 2018, piece by piece, putting things together in order to ensure that we were making the legal matchmaking process most efficient and effective, utilizing new innovative technology to enhance the customer experience. Justis Connection is more than just a platform. It is a resource that you can go to for advice, for tips, to connect with the best Black lawyers out there. And so we're building this for you. It's important for us to be able to be competitive in this market. We need to get the word out by connecting with communities, churches, sororities, fraternities, businesses, local and enterprises. It's important for us to stay ahead of the game as far as creating innovative technology. We're set on utilizing the most recent artificial intelligence and natural language processing to make sure that the legal matchmaking process is efficient and effective. We're also looking to build out our team. And so brick by brick, we are committed. We are committed to bringing you solid legal resources and solid legal referrals. So I just want to thank you all for considering Justis Connection. Please follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Subscribe on our website at www.justis, that's justisconnection.com. Thank you to the entire team and everyone who's lifted us up in prayer and continues to support us. We want to continue to support you as well. We want to keep you informed in the Justis Connection family so that you know where to go if and when you need legal resources. Hello, Justis Connection family. I feel like I'm getting a little bit of a delay. Are y'all seeing that? Or is it just me? Just me? It's all right. We're here together, and I am so excited about our conversation this evening. Let me back up. My name is Kisha Brown, and I'm the founder and CEO of Justis Connection. Created Justis Connection, as I mentioned in the video, so that there would be a resource for folks to go to connect with Black lawyers in their area. And so Black lawyers do it all, right? So you've got folks who handle cybersecurity and prenuptial agreements and adoption, business law, helping entrepreneurs, guiding them as they develop their contracts and working with vendors and HR issues. You've got folks who defend you in employment discrimination cases and make sure that people are upholding their end of their employer responsibilities. We have folks who assist you whether you're facing criminal charges or even if you need somebody to help you with personal injury. So sometimes we think about like the lawyer process. Who should I start with? Where do I go? What do I do? We try to take some of that out of your hands so that you can have less worry and know that you have a trusted source for Black lawyers. One of the things that I want to clue you in on is things to consider, right, before you hire a lawyer. Because oftentimes we kind of stop ourselves from even exploring the process because there's so many unknowns. Right. So one of the things I want you to think about is, one, do you have any supporting evidence? Right? Have you kept your paperwork? That could be text messages, it could be emails, it could be letters, but you want to be able to make sure that you've gathered everything that you can so that you can be able to show your lawyer, show the person who hopefully will be able to avail you of your rights, right? And to make it easier, right, is to be able to share, hey, this is the supporting evidence, the supporting documentation that I have for them to be able to review. Another thing you want to consider before you hire a lawyer or thinking about whether you can or should is, can I do this myself, right? There are some things that are DIY all day, right? I don't know, building a shelf, putting together a stroller, doing your nails, although I don't really do mine. There are some things you can do it yourself, but there are some things that you pay for a professional. Shoot, we'll pay tons of money for somebody to do our nails because we want that professional look. Just so is hiring a lawyer, someone who is a professional who can take whatever it is that you think that you can piecemeal together and put it at another level. And there are some things, quite frankly, that you cannot do without a lawyer, right? And so you want to think about whether it's something that if you do it yourself, is that going to end up taking you more time and in the long run, quite potentially costing you more money. So there are all these things that you want to kind of take into consideration, different factors, being able to question. Don't spend too much time, because what you don't want is for the statute of limitations to expire, right? Oftentimes there's a law in the books that says, hey, after 3 years, after 12 years, that's it. You had your time, you had your chance to bring this issue to the courts, and you let that time expire, you let it go, and so now you're unable to pursue your case. So you don't want that to happen either. If you're interested in hearing some more about some questions to consider before hiring a lawyer, we put some up on our website. So if you just go ahead to justisconnection.com, that's JUSTIS connection.com, and you can check out there. It pops up and you can download that very easily. So that's for you to be able to consider. Now, officially, welcome to the Black Lawyer Roundtable. And this evening, I am proud to welcome Aimee Griffin. She is an amazing lawyer. I'm saying, y'all, one of the things I often talk to people about is that we don't have a national Black law firm. I mean, one of those law firms that you can find in every major city, because they exist. Right? They have what they call like the top 200 Law Am, right? And those are big law firms, usually 100+ attorneys, right? And not one of them is a Black law firm. So we as an industry have a long way to go in building up the Black legal profession. And one such woman who is building her own legacy and wants to do the same for you is Aimee Griffin. Hi there.
Hey there.
How are you this evening?
I am great. Thank you for having me, Kisha.
Yes, I'm excited to have you. And so we'll just jump right on in. I'm not really big on doing a long bio. I always feel like when I go to conferences or something and they're like, and then she did this, and then right, everybody's like, okay, get to the good part. So what I will ask you to do, though, is just two things. Share where you went to law school, so the people will be like, okay, she's a real lawyer. She went to law school, right? So share where you went to law school and why you went to law school.
Okay, I went to law school and got my JD and my LLM, Master of Laws in Elder Law and Estate Planning at Western New England University. That's in Springfield, Massachusetts, where I am from. And why I went to law school. I was 40 years old working for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I was overseeing contracting and procurement and realized Black folks would not have access. That there is a institutional, operational, fundamental
That's right.
obstructions.
Yeah.
And so, but you can't win the game if you don't know the rules. So at 40, as a divorced mom with 2 kids, I went to law school at night and I worked during the day so that we could continue to eat and live indoors. But it was then as I came out of law school and created the New England Black Chamber of Commerce, because again, it was all about equity and parity and how do we create wealth in our communities, and worked with Black business owners to grow their capacity, and they would die. People died. That's part of our life. And realized that all of the work that they had created, all of the assets that they had built would often fall and just sort of fall apart because there wasn't a plan. That's when I went back to law school to get my master's of law in elder law and estate planning. So that's my story of how we got there.
We're like, what, 3 minutes in, y'all, and she done already dropped the bomb. Okay. What an inspiration, right? Because folks don't realize that for the most part, people come straight out of undergrad, right, and go into law school. Law school is full of a bunch of young folks who are, don't have that much experience. And so you went in as a grown, fully formed woman, right?
Grown up, truly a grown up.
That's right. And then was able to shape your legal career off of your experience, and then also what you envisioned the future to look like for Black people. I love that.
Absolutely. As a daughter of 2 civil rights activists, when we saw a need, you made a need. Can't prosper without my community prospering. So It was my commitment to what I needed to do. The service you pay to live on the earth. Right.
That's right. Yeah. So Aimee, I'm excited to jump on in, right? Because estate planning is one of those things, and I don't have to tell you, right, that we as in our community are still really wrapping our heads around, right? And those are the folks who feel like they have a little something to leave behind. Forget about the folks who don't feel like they have a little something to leave behind, right? And so what is the first thing, right, when you meet with someone, and Aimee does presentations all over, right, all over the country. What is it that you hope that people, we're going to start here and we'll probably circle right back and end here, but what is it that you start with when you're telling folks about sort of, hey, I'm an estate planning attorney, ...
I start off with, we need to stop thinking about surviving, but think about thriving, right? People say to us, I don't have enough to plan for. You have a life. We can't take that for granted. That's where we start with legacy building. If we are thoughtful about how we support our children, our children's children, and I don't mean biological children only, but as community contributors, how do we build so that they have a better life, than we had? We talk about all the time the racial wealth gap. But if we don't think about it, if we don't do anything different, we help it protract that racial wealth gap. So we need to be thoughtful about how is it that we can leave our community better than we found it. Our firm, we talk about building strong communities, one family at a time. But let's be thoughtful about, so often we say, I don't want to talk about the world with me not in it. How selfish is that? We think about, there's so many things that we do for the people that we love, right? We go to work, we get life insurance, right? Because of the people that we care about. Do this for the people that you care about.
And amazing. So oftentimes when because I want to take a step back, because estate planning isn't even, right, the word that we're using. I'm getting used to using the word estate planning, right? Because oftentimes we're just like, you got a will? You got a will? I got a will. You don't have a will? Okay, I need to get a will. My grandma got a will. Somebody, where is the will, right? That is sort of where we're at when it comes to
30% of Black people have at least a will. And I don't mean a real estate plan, but that's just 30%. That means 70% do not. And that's when, we see like a great example is so often people live in grandma's house. Then grandma died and, mama lives there. Then the child lives there. but we didn't do anything to transfer the property from generation to generation. And then we get jacked, right? We have to be thoughtful about how do we indeed plan so that that property can pass. We know that real estate is the foundation of the wealth of our community. But if we don't plan for it, if we don't build for it, so often still in grandma's name, and it's so jacked up because we have to probate all of those lives before that we can pass it on.
Wow.
And then if we don't plan it, then all of grandma's grandkids own it with you.
Right. Well, look, I got my own grandma will situation that I'm like, come on, grandma. Like, trust me, I'm like sending them, my family, like your information, like we need to have a deeper conversation. So for those 70%, because let's talk to the masses here. For those 70% who do not have a will, why? Why should they have a will?
If you care about the people that love you, make a plan. Because one of the things that I am so thoughtful about is so often there are so many people who have, atypical families, right? If we have loved ones who are not our, if we didn't just get married once, if we don't just have our kids, jointly with our spouse,
That's right.
Or if we have blended, or there are a lot of us who are married without really getting that license, right? We have children that we have in our community that we brought into our homes that are not legally adopted by us. If that indeed is your case, if you're not the typical 2 kids, 1 spouse, and we die in the right order, you may just really impact your family in a negative way. I talk about all the time.
What you just described, Aimee, I have to, sorry to cut you, but what you described is not the anomaly, right? Let's talk about the construct of our community, right? We're looking at oftentimes single parent households, children who, like you said, aren't biologically yours, but you've been raising them. Right? Cousins who have been a part of the family that for some people might say, oh, that's your 3rd cousin. And for you, that's like your sister. Right? And so all of these different layers that we as the Black community, and it enriches our family structure, also, it sounds like, adds a bit of complexity to how we potentially get to craft our legacy.
Right. Well, if we don't do it, we don't craft it at all. We're allowing the government to do it for us. We're allowing the government to direct us. So when we ask people who has a will, the trick question is we all do. It's just not the one that you wrote for yourself. Right? There is what the law of intestacy means, that there is a law, there is a formula of distribution of your stuff based on the formula that the state, the county, not the state, the county, the state, the Commonwealth, or the district has provided for you. And if you're cool with it, they're cool with it, because there's no way around it, right? If you don't make the effort to decide for yourself how you want your assets to be distributed, you've just got to go with whatever's provided. And that's why I say that you may have lived in grandma's house with grandma taking care of her for the last 40 years, but it doesn't matter. You share that ownership with all of your next of kin that were equally situated, the closest kin to grandma, to receive it. And unfortunately, we see it far too often. And then families, I'm not ever speaking to Zilda again because she took what was supposed to be mine.
Right, not on
she had a legal right.
Right. So tell me, and I'll tell the truth, right? So my own family, my parents told me that they got a will made, right? And they went to the person who made my grandmother's will. They have no personal relationship with this person, right? I'm sure it was a sit down, what do you want? That's what I'm putting in it, and that was it, right? This was old white guy that my grandfather used, that then my grandmother used, that then my parents said, oh, okay, we know this person and he did their will. But what I already know, right, is that there's a difference between paying somebody to, quite frankly, fill in a template and to put things on a sheet of paper in a particular order fill in the blank, and the difference from what you do, right? And one of the things that we're driving home and really want to educate folks around is the value that you get from quality legal counsel, right? Someone who, like yourself, is invested in the legacy being preserved for Black families.
hmm That's one of the things that we say to people all the time, that it is so much more than just, you can get legal Zoom. You can do, people do that. But there is truly, the scripture says, in a multitude of counsel, there is safety.
Hmm.
Get counsel, right? Get someone who really cares about the outcome. It's not just somebody who says, okay, you send this to me, I'll send it back to you and we'll get it done. That's not counsel. That's not legal counsel. That's not legal advice. We can Google anything, but you don't know the right questions to ask.
That's
One of
right.
the things that we are so mindful of is we are invested in our community because we're a part of the community. And we
That's right.
want to make sure that our community prospers, right? Being thoughtful, right?
Excellent. And I want folks to also hear, not only are you doing this work through your firm, who, by the way, y'all, she has built a complete Black woman lawyer firm. Okay. These sisters are bad, right? She done brought a whole group together to say, we can be impactful together. Right. And not only her firm, but she's also founded the Association of Black Estate. There's two P's.
Planning professionals.
Planning professionals. Hello, estate planning. See, I told you I'm still getting that planning part down. But the Association of Black Estate Planning Professionals. And so, Aimee, can you just share a little bit about why you created that, right? And the impact that you're hoping to get from that?
So I created the Association of Black Estate Planning Professionals for a very specific reason, to bridge the racial wealth gap. I tell people all the time, I can write the best estate plan ever, and it can be focused on legacy building. But if it has $47.50 in there, it's not really that impactful. But if I can work with culturally competent, committed to the mission, financial advisors, accountant, real estate executives, or real estate brokers, if I work with coaches, to bring together the strategy to create not just a legacy plan, but a life plan that is able to create wealth and have it pass through generations. We want to bring folks together to have a team. I learned from actually a young lady named Kiva Sturdivant created the concept, or in my mind, the term personal board of directors. I want to know so much about estate planning. I want to know deep, and my lane is narrow. But if I bring alongside a financial advisor, if I bring alongside an accountant, we have multiple lanes. And then we have this thoroughfare that we can support anybody to have and to create wealth and transfer it through generations. But it's a strategic, collaborative effort. I say all the time, we are better together, but we got to work together. So often we are attacked by saying we work in silos. The Association of Black Estate Planning Professionals brings together culturally competent folks to, one, build relationships so that we can work together, as well as raises our capacity. We have actually this month a workshop, a virtual conversation on taxes that impact legacy. It's not just about the income tax, but it's about capital gains tax, generation skipping, transfer tax. How do we avoid that? How do we manage that? Those are the things that we get to talk about in a culturally competent ways, because we know what we don't know, because we are a part of our community. And so we want to bring the information forward, but we're working with the financial professionals to make and build and bridge it so that we can collectively transform our communities to bridge the racial wealth gap.
Awesome. Awesome. Look, y'all, I'm over here taking notes like, wait a second, what'd you say? Excellent. And you mentioned something that is quite frankly on a lot of people's minds, even though some states have pushed back the tax deadline this year for personal filings, business filings remain at April 15th. And so a lot of folks are still filing and getting their paperwork in order. But you mentioned taxes and estate planning, right? And how taxes can impact your wealth that you're transferring. And so that's something that I don't think a lot of people are aware of or even know how deep that can get, how deep that can be. Can you dig a little deeper for us and share a little bit more about how that can impact your legacy?
You know, it is awfully traumatic to many people when you don't know what you don't know, and when you learn it at the wrong time. For example, one of the families that we worked with, dad had died in what 1980 something, and then mom died in 1990 something, and of course we didn't transfer the name, we didn't do the estate, probate the estate, and then they probated the estate, and now it was a DC property that was worth over $1 million. And when they passed, when they decided to sell it because they wanted all four children to have access to it, over $200,000 was required in capital gains tax. Capital gains is the difference between what you bought property for and what you sell it for. That difference is the capital gains, and it is taxed on, right, at about a 30% rate. But if we don't know it, we don't anticipate it. And unfortunately, if you get that money and nobody's counseled you, you spend that money, and then the IRS is looking for you. So we encourage people to, one, make sure. That's why I say you need to have the benefit of counsel. They were working with a real estate attorney who didn't understand any of those things. One of the things that we talk about all the time is if indeed if you have a house or you have a business and you need to sell it because the person passed away, how do you plan for it? We want to be thoughtful about how do we make it work. If you transfer something from you to your children, you usually avoid taxes. But if you transfer it to your grandchildren, there is what we call a generation skipping transfer tax. And in some cases it's avoided, some cases it's not. But we got to know what we're got to know, again, in order to be able to plan for it. And what we don't realize, for most people, is Maryland has an inheritance tax. That means if you want to leave something to your grandchildren, to your nieces, your nephews, your friends, your aunts, your uncles, even your siblings, there's a tax on it. So we got to be planning for that. And if you leave something that has significant value and they don't have the funds to pay for it, what happens is they have to often sell the asset to get the benefit of it. So we need to be thinking about who is it that we're leaving something to, and how do we strategically avoid those taxes? One of the things that we work with people a lot of times to do is, like with real property, how do we avoid the capital gains tax? You can do what we call, the IRS calls a 1031 exchange, means you can exchange it and buy another property quickly. But again, if you don't know, you don't know. That's when we say that attorneys are truly, it's great if you have the opportunity to speak to someone. It's so worth it. We don't want to be penny wise and pound foolish and saving your dollars, but then losing it in the long run.
Gotcha. Wow. So much to consider. And you mentioned something that I just want to make sure that folks are aware of, right? And we're able to follow along. Can you just explain probate? Because you said probate and estate. And so we've even been talking about estate planning, right? And everybody's like, I don't have an estate. Okay. I rent, I lease my car, I got student loans, I work 9 to 5, right? Can you explain estate and the relation of the probate?
So when someone passes away, everything that you own with your name on it without a beneficiary, if your name's on it, you can't sign your name anymore to pass it to someone. So all of those assets are frozen, right? So, because there's nobody who can sign that title for that car if you own your car, or even your bank account, right? Because it's just stuck there because I can't give anybody permission. And we have so many times people say, she wanted to give it to me. I say it all the time. She meant to give it to me, but she forgot to put my name on it, right?
Right.
But
so if you have a will, that's not enough.
So because we have the probate is a court procedure, right? You have to take your will to the court. On TV, they have this whole reading of the will, going to the lawyers for the reading of the will, and that's just good TV. because the judge has to make the determination that a will is proven and validated, right? They have to, because truth be told, we know people who can write, sign a name and say, oh yeah, my name was, when Kisha Brown passed away, this is her will. And, but the court has to prove it. And the first
every
step
will
of that,
they do that?
I'm sorry?
They do that for every will?
For every will.
Wow.
And, so if you don't have a will, the court has to probate the estate. And that's what we call opening a probate, right? So if you have a will, the first step is that you bring the will to the court, and the court says, okay, we're accepting. You have to file the will, and then you have to file a petition to the court. And again, it's different between each state, but we'll speak typically the DMV, right? You bring your petition to the court to say, I want this will accepted, and I want to open an estate, right, on behalf of the person who passed away. Therefore, the first thing they do is not just say, okay, great, here it is, let me sign this and send you about your way. The first thing they do is they say, we got to put notice in the newspaper that,
you're like, wait, what?
Right. I don't want to tell nobody, right? But they're going to put a notice in the paper to say, who is the person in charge? And let's say Aimee passed away. Does she owe you any money? That's the first thing they want to know. And they're going to put it in the newspaper. And let's say in DC, it's for 3 weeks, for three consecutive weeks in 2 newspapers. They want to make sure everybody, if I owe anybody, Sears and Roebuck, going to come forward and say, Aimee owes me money. That's right. And you have the time period to come forward. And until all of that time period's over, you're not supposed to give anything away that, you can't come collecting that stuff that Aimee left to you. But then afterwards, they'll say the creditors get to be paid first. And then after the creditors are paid, you can begin to give away those assets. But the truth of the matter is, you have more creditors and not enough assets. Let's say you have a house and a bunch of creditors. That house needs to get sold to satisfy the creditors. Right.
So and even if you're like, I'm leaving my house to my favorite child, but at the same time you have a lot of debt, that favorite child may not actually inherit that house.
That's right. And one of the things that's why we encourage people, first and foremost, avoid probate. Avoid probate.
You avoid probate by having a will.
No, you do not avoid probate by having a will, because the will directs probate. Right? The will directs the probate process, but the will says this is what you need to do. And so this is who I wanted to go to, but the court's got to validate and make sure that this is the way that you go. There are ways to avoid probate that include, first and foremost, like bank accounts. Now, remember your bank account. If your name is the only name on it, and I encourage that to be the case, but if your name is the only name on it, as opposed to putting, your kid's name on your bank account as well. But if your name is the only name on it and you pass away, that stuff is in there until the court says they can get it out, right? Then the second piece about that is, in DC, you can do what's called a transfer on death deed for your house.
Okay.
Right? That avoids probate. With that, you can transfer your house. You own it all of your lifetime, but soon as you pass away, it can transfer without probate. But it's still, the mortgage will still stay attached, and that person can assume that mortgage typically. But it is a matter of making sure that if indeed you want that person to receive it, and you can change your mind. That's one of the blessings of the transfer on death deed, is you can change your mind and then and then revoke that transfer on death deed, but it avoids the probate process.
Got you. So
the other way to,
because I had another question. I had a different question to follow up, but then you said that we're supposed to only have our own name on our bank accounts. Now, Are we not supposed to have beneficiaries? Because I got like
No,
5
you can have
kids.
beneficiaries,
They're on, like,
but
all
don't have co-owners, right? Because a
okay.
lot of times people say, I'll never forget, I had this mom come and, no, I'm sorry, the mom who had written a will. And in her will, she said, the Bank of America bank account goes to these 3 kids. The Bank of, PNC goes to these 3 kids. But she also put those kids, one kid on each of the bank accounts. That kid who was on the bank account said, I'm co-owner. Stuff that now that bank account is mine, it doesn't need to go nobody else. And so those other kids who were looking to receive, she said, but mama expected. But it's too bad. The law says that it's mine once indeed mama passes away. Because the
Gotcha.
law is the law. So often people say, well, I can just tell my kids what I want for them. Unfortunately,
You can't do
I
that. There's
hear
always
these
that
stories
one.
too often. I mean,
There's al-
I'm litigating those situations where
Right.
they've not done what you've expected them to do. They do
Wow.
what's written.
So is that something that is a part of, would you say, a fairly robust part of your practice where you actually have to go to court to have, what mama or big papa like wanted to happen when they left, but there is some tension, there is contention. And now
Well,
you're
so this is, yes, where there's contention when people say, no, that's not a valid will because really I knew what she wanted. But more often than not, there's not a leg to stand on if mom didn't write the will, right? We had a matter where mom had met with me with her intention of saying she had bought 3 properties and had 3 kids and wanted each kid to have a property. She had transferred the first one to the eldest, and then she went into a coma and died and didn't have a chance to transfer the other 2 or to write a will to say the other 2 were to go. The
right.
eldest child who received the property said that by rights, because she didn't have a will, he got a third of the other 2. Right. And he stuck to it. We withdrew from that case because we would have been conflicted. But I'm not going to be a part of, that just going against what the mom wanted. I mean, I am I truly appreciate the fact that we could say no to some things. Right. No, I'm not going to take every case because if it's wrong in my spirit, it's not.
Yeah.
I'm not selling my soul.
I hear that. I mean, and that's one of the beauties that folks don't realize also. Like when you are in private practice, you get to decide what case. It's not just, oh, I'm getting an attorney and you're going to take my case. You also get to choose who your clients are.
Absolutely, it is, and which is why we have been very thoughtful about it. As I developed the practice, we wanted to do things that was community building. Right. We wanted to make sure that the actions that we provided enhanced the people that we worked for. Right.
Wow.
Not that I'm not saying that everybody needs to have zealous representation. I'm not saying, but that doesn't have to be me. Right. Doesn't have to be the people that that work in my practice, that
Right.
we are able to work together to build up communities. And we also can fight for justice when we see someone being taken advantage of. We stand in their stead. We stand with them to say, no, that's not okay.
Right. Wow. No, that's excellent. So, oh, you said that, oh, and I also want to pause. If there's anybody out there, whether you're on YouTube or Facebook streaming, if you have any questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat. We definitely are open. I should have said that in the beginning, so I apologize. Miss Bailey or whomever, if you if you have a question, please go ahead and put that in the comments, and we'll definitely direct those to Aimee. I'll ask them, and then we'll be able to get you some answers. So you mentioned that, which I thought was such a great point, that you want to have the right kind of attorney, right? Not all lawyers, most lawyers don't do everything, right? People often think you went to law school so they can ask you any law under the sun, right? Like, oh, good, you a lawyer, let me ask you about, and then fill in the blank. And in the situation that you shared, the person had a real estate lawyer, right, who was advising them on estate matters. And sometimes, quite frankly, people, that's easy to mix up, right? You're saying estate is both
Absolutely.
a word, real estate planning. How are these not more similar? But the intricacies of estate planning aren't necessarily known by just folks who practice business law, practice real estate, practice landlord tenant, right? So they can help you on one thing, but it behooves us, Black people, that when we are looking for someone to do a particular subject matter, that we go to the lawyer who focuses on that subject matter, right? So the Griffin firm, right, would be your spot to go to for estate planning. You wouldn't go to the Griffin firm for criminal defense. That's not what they do, right? But estate planning, right, that's y'all's ballywick.
Exactly.
Yeah, and when you're telling folks about, Wills 101, because you blew my mind with that stat, that 70% of Black people do not have a will. That means we got a lot of work to do, Aimee, because
We have a lot of work to do.
Partnering and really educating and empowering our community. But 70% of us are walking around here every day, 5 seconds away from, a slip and fall that takes our life away. I mean,
Corona.
today we had, I don't know if you heard of Midwin Charles, right? Black woman, lawyer, owned her own firm. She was a media correspondent.
Yes.
Even Joy Reid and others really came out yesterday because she unexpectedly passed away at age 47. And it was a reminder, it's always in death, y'all, right? That we are reminded about our own mortality. We're reminded to get our houses in order, right? And the work that you do, Aimee, in building up the Black community through looking at how do we preserve our wealth, and as you said, create wealth. That's a powerful thing, because we often think we got to work to the bone to create wealth. And here it is that you have said that there is a methodology to use the very laws and systems that we are unaware of and unknowledgeable about to build and create wealth.
And one of the things that we think about forever is how do we plan not just for today? How do we plan for tomorrow? I mean, I encourage people all of the time, if we look at the systems of injustice that has, gone on for decades against Black people, we say power
Centuries.
concedes nothing.
Go ahead and say centuries, because we know it's been from the minute we got here, and the proverbial knee is still
on our necks.
On our neck. Yeah.
And power concedes nothing without a demand. Right. And when I was thinking and talking about, how slavery didn't end because of, the true appreciation of our humanity, but it ended to preserve the Union. And that's when we got to be 3/5 of a people. Right. But if we are thoughtful, and then we look at all of the life insurance injustice, the devaluation of our lives. So if we are thoughtful about how is it that we can use the tools that are available to us so that we plan not just for our lives, but our children's lives and our children's children's lives. One of the things that I always encourage people to do as we do trust work is to say that when you should build into your trust that for your grandchild, whenever a grandchild is born, you get $1 million life insurance policy on your grandchild, right? So then your grandchild can have that, and of course, because that's the cheapest it will ever be. Let's say when they go to college, you could borrow $400,000 to pay for college. You can put those stipulations on it. When they're ready to buy a house, you can say they can borrow from their life insurance policy $100,000 as a down payment. So that way it guarantees that they have good credit enough to get a mortgage and that they have a job. But only then will they get it. But when they pass away, that's $500,000 more that goes into the trust for the next generations. We can be thoughtful about strategically building for generation to generation to generation, but we got to work together to think about it and do it, right?
Aimee, You know I'm over here taking notes, right? You had just said that grandparents, when you have a grandchild, go ahead and get $1 million life insurance policy on that grandchild. One is the cheapest it will ever be to get a life insurance policy. And two, you are setting that child up to be able to have what sounds like almost like a trust fund. And I say that very
It
loosely.
is a trust fund. It's not almost. It's exactly that trust
It's
fund.
a trust fund to be able to not have to worry about how you're going to pay for college, but focus on, what college, what major and excelling, and not have to worry about money. You done said something there. I
Can you
mean,
imagine what it would be like to not have to think about student loans? Right. You
um,
get to pick the college that you want, not based on who gives you the most money, but who provides you with the best opportunity.
yeah, it's not too late for that. You hear me, Black people? Look, I'm about to play this. We about to make a clip just of that so I can send it to my mama and my dad and be like, Aimee had said that that's the best way to love her. I mean, literally, I'm hosting my daughter's 1 year old 1 year birthday. Yeah, on Saturday, right? So all of this is
We
really,
spend so much money on buying them foolish little cute stuff.
and people ask me that all the time, right? Like, oh, what can I get her? And I'm like, really, besides food and Pampers, right? We can rock and roll with everything else. I'm good with hand-me-down clothes. I mean, she's gonna outgrow them, and you only need but so many toys. We have so many awesome Black books, but that legacy part, right? Planting the seed part, that investing in her in ways that will manifest over and over beyond, right? That is where we need to start talking about how we look at the future, right? And not thinking, well, dang, it's too late, because what you're talking about is stuff we can do now.
Right. And as Attorney Charles passed away, those are the opportunities to have the conversations. One of the things my God bless my poor children, every time I saw some learning lesson on TV, I would call them and say, let's have this conversation about this. When Prince passed away, right, without an estate plan, we talked about it, right? So if we're having these conversations all of the time, it normalizes it. It doesn't create a distress because if we see it as part of an everyday reality, we're not having it for the first time. So often, people are fearful of having it when someone has a diagnosis,
Mm.
right? I've been talking about this to my children for so long, right? That they know everything that we need to have planned, and how they should be planning it for their children as well.
Yeah. That's powerful. So here we are. You have shared with us that we don't have to be scared, right, about having this conversation. And I hear you one of the comments, right, that death is difficult, right? That transitioning, and talking about it really beforehand. We talk about death, the time of death, and afterwards, the funeral and expenses. That's definitely difficult. Beforehand, we say it's difficult. So there's no ideal moment, but I love the fact that you said the more we talk about these things, the more that we have the conversation, we can normalize it in a way that allows us to be more honest and more open and more thoughtful, as opposed to having that conversation in a moment of crisis.
Well, and one of the things that also how we shape it is not talking about death, but talking about legacy building. If we frame it as legacy building, then you feel empowered as opposed to feeling like death comes and takes you. But let's plan for building the generations to have the strength in our generation, on our kids' kids. That is transformative, just our perspective.
Yeah. So how do we, like, if folks are like, I'm inspired, I want to start to have this conversation. I'm going to have this conversation tonight. When I sign off of here in 7.5 minutes, right? I want to have this conversation with my spouse. I want to have this conversation with myself. I'm a single woman or I'm a single man, right? I want to have this conversation with my parents. I want to have this conversation with my children. Where do we start? Like, literally, what is the first thing that we should have come out of our mouth to even initiate having a conversation about this?
what's the 3 questions we say estate planning answers? We all know we talk about what happens when you die, and that's what freaks people out. But and that's what allows people to be procrastinators, because that's a scary conversation. And then you also could, I hear people say, I'll be dead, I won't really care. But the second question I think is a catalyst for action, is especially for single people. What happens if I can't take care of myself? Do you really want the first person who volunteers to be the one who gets to take care of you, right? Gets to take care of you and your money, right? I encourage people to be thoughtful about, let's think about that. Who do we trust? Who do we like? And then that's what compels you. And then the empowering part is, what's the legacy that you want to leave? Transformative as well. Thinking about the people that you love, the people that will be impacted. How is it that you want to build that future for them, right? As we love them, if we love them, we don't want to add on top of their grief, distress. Whoever wants to see their name on a part of a GoFundMe page? Whoever wants to create the scavenger hunt because they don't know where to look for nothing, right? Because if you don't have it written down and captured somewhere, it's truly just a scavenger hunt, because you don't know who, what, where, when, and how. And it's truly, it's a nightmare for the people who love you.
I just need to sit in that, okay? Because you done said a word. I mean, and those are before we can have the conversation with someone else, sounds like we need to have the conversation with ourselves, because you just had some really heartstrong questions, right? That we ourselves need to ask. And it's important for us to have these conversations so that they can, and look, people, Aimee didn't say you need to have these conversations and come up with the answer.
No.
She didn't say, right, have the conversation and then put out your blueprint. It's about starting the conversation and then connecting with an advisor, right? Finding a strong, smart, savvy, thoughtful, innovative Black estate planning attorney, right? And you'll find that having somebody like that in your corner takes that pressure off of you. I know I'm thinking about it because it can be a lot, right, to really consider. But it's all about having somebody in your corner who can take that pressure off of you and know that they are skilled in what they do and that they are there to guide you and lead you through the process.
One of the things, actually, Kisha, especially in thinking about if you have minor children, right? Who is it that you want to have appointed as guardian? And who's the backup to that person? One of the things that we do in our firm is we have this concept of the village, right? The village stepping in, and we concretize what that looks like. Memorialize who are the people that you want to be in part of your children's lives, children going forward, right? As advisors, and being thoughtful about what are the things that are important to you. How do we identify that? If we do nothing else but thinking about, anybody who has a minor child should be very thoughtful about, who do we want? We don't want just the first person who volunteers. Clearly, we don't want just the first person who volunteers to be the one who takes care of their children. And what values do we want instilled? We have such a responsibility if we have nothing else.
Yeah. Wow. It's going to be a heavy night, y'all. Okay. Because now I got a whole bunch of stuff that, and really not even to think about it just tonight, but really start to flesh some of these things out. And the first step is reaching out to an estate planner. Aimee and her team have amazing webinars that they host. Here you are on the Black Lawyer Roundtable, getting some information. These are the first steps. So when you're listening in, you are in the right place, right? You are on the right path. And what we don't want to happen is that we get stuck, right? We hear something, we're inspired in that moment, and then life takes over and we don't forgot, right? You're like, I think her name was Aimee, right? Wasn't it Aimee? No, it's Aimee. Don't forget, okay? That's double E. That's double E, y'all, okay? So it's all about moving forward, right? And because this is an active exercise. This isn't just do nothing, think about it. Things will take care of themselves. This requires active activity, right? Action. That's the word I'm looking for. This requires action on our part. And so, Aimee, as we close out, I would just love for you to, if you had any final sort of action advice for us as folks have listened, have learned. Any last closing words on that?
First and foremost, just make a list of the people that you care about, right? And that should compel you to action. If nothing else, identifying those people that you love, it knowing the impact of you doing nothing, what would that do? There are so many things that we can do, so many things that it's easy, it's fun, but do the things that matter. Have a legacy that would be transformative, right? It's not just about you, but it's about the people that we love.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Wise words, sister. Wise words. Okay. This is not going to be the last time that we hear from her, but it's been such a blessing to have someone who has devoted their life to creating and maintaining legacy in the Black community, and is focused on that every day. Right? This is not Aimee's side hustle. This isn't something that she just comes on and talks a good game about, but this is what her entire practice is devoted to. And so we know you're in good hands when you go to the Griffin firm. Aimee, thank you so much again for being here this evening, for blessing us with your wisdom and your time and your just the information that you've shared here tonight.
Thank you so much for the work that you've done, Kisha. Thank you for the service that you provide to not just Black lawyers, but the Black community.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And that wraps us up. I thank everyone for tuning in. Either you're live or you're going to be viewing us later. Definitely keep in touch. Subscribe at justisconnection.com so that you can be connected as we continue to bring you content that is both relevant and reliable. And so we hope that you tune in again next Thursday for the Black Lawyer Roundtable at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This is the Justis Connection in collaboration with BlackUSA.News. So everyone, have a good night.